It's time for the Access of Easy podcast, the weekly technology digest that keeps you ahead of the curve. Brought to you by EasyDNS.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Access of Easy, a late night Thursday rip. This is number 375. My name's Joey. That's Len. My man. Beautiful day today. Did you golf? You golfing tomorrow? What's the plan?
Yeah, tomorrow I'm going to be golfing. It's one of my last days, I think. We have tickets for playing a Mystic tomorrow. I'm not sure if you ever played Mystic before. It's a fun course. Yeah. So I'm playing there, and I got tickets for somewhere else. So still gotta play, Joey. Until it snows. We're gonna keep going. It looks like. So, yeah. What about you? What are you doing tomorrow?
I'm having a child, so I'll be.
Oh, really?
I'll be pretty tied up.
Yeah. Imagine that.
I'll be pretty tied up. I was just about to say, I the few courses I went to this year, I'm getting emails now, which is pretty rare. Like, I don't think golf courses use their mailing list all that often this time of year, but I'm getting a lot of emails saying we're still open. Come book a tee time. Which, I mean, you would know better than me. Is that out of the ordinary for this time of year? I guess maybe no.
As long as there's no snow on the ground, you're gonna see courses remain open, because if they can make money, they'll stay open. They don't care.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. That's a good point. No, but I'm busy tomorrow and probably for the next 20 years. The quote of the week last week: the limited human wisdom that guides our concept of virtue often comes from our compelling, or becomes, I should say, our compelling force for evil. That was from Chin Ning Chu. No one got it. I wouldn't guess that. Good quote, though. This week's quote: peace is not absence of conflict. It is the ability to handle conflict by peaceful means. If you know who that was by, put it in the comments. You know the deal. No Googling. Don't search it. Don't ask ChatGPT. Don't ask Grok. You get your next renewal round on EasyDNS. There's another good quote like that. That's about, I think it's about like your sort of competence. I'm pretty sure it's geared towards men, but I won't say it's for sure geared towards men. That it's not about being harmless is not the same as being peaceful, and you never want to be harmless. I've always liked quotes of that nature, so I'm hoping somebody gets that. We can find out who that was by.
That's a good fortune cookie quote.
Yeah, sounds like something you see at the Mandarin, right? Where do you want to start? We got a couple of bangers today. We added a late one here from show favorite, friend of our show, friend of Access of Easy, Michael Geist. But we can start wherever you want. You pick.
S-210, buddy. S-210.
Let's do it.
Bill, S-210. The Canadian bill enact to restrict young person's online access to sexually explicit material.
Nothing new for this show, right? We talked about this a few times already.
Yeah, it's moving its way through the legislature, and it's a somewhat controversial piece of legislation that's in Canada, because the goal is to restrict access to porn sites for minors. And how would that be done? Well, through age verification for online services that host adult content. And those who want to push this, they're saying this is needed to protect young people out there from engaging and getting access to harmful content. And the age verification, getting this, is a necessary step and a very effective way at trying to ensure that they don't get access to it. Like, just a big LOL. Like, what's going to happen? They're not going to use a VPN or provide false information. But either way, what if they do provide real information? Let's go down this path. They're also trying to hold these platforms accountable for the content that they host, and they're encouraging them to implement stricter controls on their side. So really, what's the downside from all this? Well, now you have these sites out there, right? And what are they going to have? More info on people. And it's not just any information, it's the exact date of birth of an individual. So how are they going to secure this moving forward? They may not be the most reputable of companies to begin with, considering the type of content that you're dealing with. And now they're going to have that type of information on somebody. Look, also the bill's definition of what is considered sexually explicit material, well, this is potentially too broad. It's very vague, and it could impact potentially a wide range of content, not just adult material, but also they're saying this could also lead into artistic or even educational materials, just because of the way it's written. So as for where this stands, it's passed the Senate. It's passed the second reading in the House of Commons. It's currently in committee for consideration. This thing could potentially make its way down and get royal assent. It's very close to that. Has to go through this last committee, one more reading at the House of Commons, and boom, it's ready for royal assent. Unless the government falls in the next little while, this thing looks like it may see the light of day.
You mentioned the goal of the bill there, protecting people from, young people specifically, from pornographic imagery and other adult content. I think that's bunk. That's not the goal of the bill. The goal of the bill, if that was the goal of the bill, there would be clear definitions of what that content was. There's not. That's done on purpose. My most generous interpretation of this bit of legislation, this bill, and of the Senator Maville Deschênes, is that this is a misguided attempt to protect young people from stuff that they don't need to be protected from. No one's suggesting that pornography is good, adult content's good for kids or for anyone of any age, to be honest with you. I'm a big anti-porn person myself, but the thing I would suggest to you and to other people listening and watching is that without a clear definition, the goal of the bill becomes more clear. And the clarity provided to you actually leans in the direction of, we want to make sure everyone who goes online has to provide some modicum of identification regardless of their age. Maybe not now, but we need to set the groundwork for this in the future. And we want to see your age, your identity, where you are, what you're saying, why you're saying it, things of this nature, track your activity. It's not hypothetical. We're seeing now, thanks to the election next door, there's going to be a concerted effort, I think, from other governments to characterize X and other similar platforms where adult content is hosted, by the way, as platforms that need to be regulated. And if they can't regulate free speech, they are sure going to try and regulate whether or not you have to tell someone who you are before you say something online. And this is dangerous to me. We're entering into an era where trust in institutions has never been lower, deserved at every turn, where trust in politicians has never been lower, deserved at every turn, and where people are more likely now to find others who share the same point of view because they are noticing the same trends in society, the same trends in politics, and the same trends in economics. And there's nothing scarier for a government than a good idea finding traction among friends. This legislation aims to stop that. And until someone proves to me without a shadow of a doubt that this is actually meant for the things that are being claimed, that's where I'm going to come down on this. We should all be worried about this bill. We've talked about this on Access of Easy a dozen times, like I mentioned. We had Professor Geist, who we'll talk about later in the show, discuss this bill on our show as well, on Canadian Bitcoiners podcast, because this is important. Today, it's pornography. Tomorrow, it's talk about whether or not government should be supporting Ukraine. And then the day after that, it's talk about whether or not we should be trying to get out of the Canadian dollar because the basement is too much to handle. Do you start going down this road, it's very hard to go back. And that's the thing we have to consider. Nothing else.
Just make plans, right? Like you see what's coming down the pipe, and you understand essentially what you need to do.
Totally.
And it's not like this thing is going to be stopped in its tracks. If it would have been already done so by now.
Crazy that, I think, was it S-210 we were talking about a little while ago, and we got into a little back and forth about how there's no way this will make it because government will have to be reset by an election or reset by a confidence vote, and these things that are on the vine will all die. I don't know if it was S-210 or another one, but it seems to me like they're going to try and push a lot of this stuff through, and there's no inclination from the sitting Liberals or the NDP, maybe the Bloc, remains to be seen, whether or not they want to have an election or push for a confidence vote. So a lot of this stuff, I think that both of us thought would end up, dead on the side of the road, suddenly has found new life. And
to give credit to the Liberals and maybe even the NDP as well, the Liberals for sure, they've been voting for the most part against this bill. And I'm looking at it. So there's a lot of people that have voted no. So not all of them. Some voted yes.
They're doing it. The Liberals and the left in general have become the political stripe of, God, I got to choose my words carefully here. Widening the social Overton window, and so pornography for young people, I think, falls into that category. I think incorrectly, but yeah, I'm not surprised to see that. All in all, though, the thing to keep in mind is that for one reason or another reason, you're going to see this stuff move through parliamentary processes at a time when basically nothing is moving through parliamentary processes in this country. It's wrapped up in nonsense, right?
It's all stuck. But the conservatives, though, they've been voting yes. They're en masse. They're voting yes. They're the ones that there's the liberals. They're fractured in terms of if they support us or not. But I mean, just trying to give credit where credit is due, right? Like
something to that, Len. You're right.
Let's talk about this Electronic Frontier Foundation, the EFF, and they've been doing their own research, and they've recently exposed that the Department of Homeland Security, their use of surveillance technologies, more specifically, the stuff that's being used to monitor immigrants and foreign visitors, might just be infringing on some people's rights and is causing some people some issues here. So, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, they have been monitoring the social media activities of immigrants and foreign visitors, and this practice known as the Visa Life Cycle Vetting Initiative, VLVI. It almost looks like Roman numerals to me. This involves collecting and analyzing data from platforms, the stuff we all know, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that garbage, right? Well, this is another reason why you shouldn't be posting your personal stuff online, because they're analyzing this information and they're collecting it and using it for whatever reason. Well, this whole collection of data, they're saying this violates First Amendment rights of individuals, as they may be discriminated based on their online expressions. So the program that was run by the DHS was rather secretive, and thus it's making it very challenging to examine the full impact on individuals, because it's hard to get all the information. And they're saying that it could be used against, the people that are against this, they're saying it could be used against the people based on their political views, religious beliefs, and other personal opinions. And it just seems odd that they would be doing all this surveillance on immigrants and foreign visitors. There's distrust for them, it seems like, but for what reason are they going to be using this as to target them in the future, potentially impacting their ability to gain citizenship or work in the country? Who the heck knows? But in a time where we are posting so much information, personal information, and doing it without any care, without any thinking, this information is going to be easily snagged by anybody that wants to do it. And it looks like it's being done right here. So be very careful out there. If you have a social media account, try to be a little bit more cautious when you're posting crap online.
It's unclear to me what the violation is here. Is it unclear to you as well?
Because it's undisclosed what could be done in the future. So the fact,
but the information, like you mentioned, is public.
Correct. So, it's in a public domain.
Yeah.
Okay, but
I'm not saying the ethics. Okay, some gray area there, but I'm having trouble understanding exactly what the EFF is claiming the issue to be. Is what I'm saying. They're entering into the territory of mind reading, right? Like, we're worried you're going to do something in the future with this. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Probably they will, in fact. But this in and of itself is not, to me, an issue. In fact, this is probably the status quo. I think you're kind of getting at the same thing in your closing comments there. So what should the EFF be pushing for here exactly?
Well, hopefully nixing this program altogether and deleting all the data that they've captured. If you are an individual that falls under this category, either an immigrant or a visitor, foreign visitor, you're going to be very careful about posting anything online. Well, you should have initially, but say, an election just happened. Mm-hmm. I would certainly refrain from posting anything with respect to the election. I would stay as neutral as possible, mention nothing, and go from there, which is too bad, because there's a lot of people that want to voice their opinions, and that may not be personal information. That's just simply an opinion. And if you're not able to do so, your First Amendment is then infringed. At least you're kind of doing it yourself, because you don't want to see what happens in the future because of the data that they're gathering.
I am skeptical a little bit. Mostly because if I go to so my beef with this really is that the EFF is asking for, I think, transparency in some regard, right? What is it that you're doing with the program? What are you planning on doing? Blah, blah, blah. And immigration and foreign visitors have become, if they haven't been for a long time, they've certainly become recently a hot topic in politics and in privacy. And in broader society, to be honest, here in Canada, the United States, we just had an election, like I mentioned, and there's stuff, floating around these days about what President-elect Trump is planning on doing with these programs. The thing I'm curious about is why doesn't the EFF note, who is funding their operation in terms of this idea that we can't monitor social media of immigrants and visitors? Like I part of me understands the sort of crux of this issue, the sort of fulcrum that the EFF is trying to plant its flag on. You can't use this information because you don't know the context. You don't know what, like, I get that. But at the same time, we're seeing now immigration at levels from countries, immigration at levels that are unprecedented from countries who don't have America's best interest at heart in this case. But also, we've seen problems here, movie theaters being set on fire, Molotov cocktails thrown through the window, and gang fights from certain parts of Asia that you'd never see 10 or 12 years ago. Like, don't you, I think, like, isn't there a common sense slant to this, that you want this kind of monitoring at some level, right?
The fact that you have to monitor them on your soil means that the vetting process sucks.
I agree with you there. I'm not disputing that. I think there's like fault on both sides here, which is why I understand like the ethical dilemma. But would you prefer that no monitoring is done, or is there some monitoring that's okay, but other that's not okay? That's the question I'm asking. I don't see an answer to that. And if I go to the EFF's financials, there's no disclosure of who their big funders are. So are their big funders the same people who are pushing immigration policies like this? I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole here, but like, why isn't this stuff public? You're asking for people who are in the country, who went through a process that is at some level broken. We both agree on that. To just exist without having any of their social media posts monitored for patterns, I guess, monitored for tendencies, monitored for potential, legal violations. I'm not sure exactly what the nature of the program is. It's hard to say from the article, but
let's take this a different direction, Joey.
Okay.
Would you, if you had an option and you could immigrate to a different country for whatever reason, which one would you choose to go to?
From here?
Yeah.
Oh, the States for sure would be my first choice.
So you're in the United States now. You're an immigrant.
Yeah.
Is that, knowing this program's in existence, is this going to impact your ability to, or the amount of information you're going to put on YouTube, Twitter, anywhere else?
It's not that it won't. It should. I think it should. Yeah.
And then there you go. And do you like that? You've been yourself muzzling yourself.
I don't like it, but the fact of the matter is, if I go online and say that I hate the US government and the US way of life, that's one thing, right? Again, the article is unclear on what exactly is being monitored or what exactly the, quote unquote search terms are. But it's a different thing entirely if I go online and say, what we need to do is find a way to disrupt state government operations or disrupt community or whatever, right? Like, that's a different thing entirely. Sure. I have my gripes with the Canadian government. I have my gripes with the American government. I have my gripes with all sorts of governments, but everybody does. It is my right, I think, to have gripes with the government. And, I can anticipate what you're going to say. Is that going to affect your status as an immigrant or your status as a potential new entrant to America? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But ultimately, that is a decision of the nation you're planning to enter, not you,
Sure.
What the EFF is asking for is not free speech. They're asking for free speech with no repercussions. And no one has free speech with no repercussions. Correct. If I say something to my wife or to you or to my employer or to whoever, I can say whatever I want. But to be free of consequences is a different story entirely. Now, and that's to me where the line is.
Now, take into context Bill S-210, which is a Canadian bill. And we talked about that the wording in there is kind of vague in terms of what they're trying to capture. Yeah. They don't even have anything like this in the United States. So you have no idea what you'll be looking for. You can be saying something that is, let's say hypothetically, pro-Trump right now. You're saying, oh, I'm happy he won. And the next people that come in, they look at this and they're, oh, look, he was against our enemies, and sorry, he was for our enemies. Let's now do something with his immigration status, or vice versa. You say something that's pro-Biden. Now the people that are in power, they look at it. So you just don't know. The fact that they're capturing this information is kind of concerning, and I would say that's damning enough. Just to have it is enough of like, what the heck is going on?
Look, I don't want to say it's an ideal situation for sure. I think you're right about that. My question is more, what should your expectation be as somebody who presumably, if you have a problem with this legislation, is trashing one of the two political parties in the States? Is your expectation you should be able to do it freely?
This is not a legislation. This is just something that's being done under the table.
Right. Okay. Fine. But you know what I mean? Like, what should your expectation be? Is the question. I mean, Len, when you go over the border, like if you go over the border and the border agent wants to see your phone, like if you,
I have to hand it over. I have two options.
And so, like, turn around. You know, like no matter what you say or where you say it, there's some percentage chance that someone is going to see it, and there will be consequences for your actions. The consequences range from jail to not being able to go to the military mall to the Under Armour outlet. Like that's the range of possible outcomes, right? But there isn't a world where the percentage chance that you face no repercussions is zero. I don't think that ship has sailed. And so my question is not whether it's a good idea, bad idea, whether it's ethical or not. I don't think it's not a good idea, and I don't think it's ethical. But what is the expectation at this point? And again, the EFF, by the way, need to see where that money's coming from. Why are you so bent out of shape about this?
So what we hope for, like what we're trying to achieve, is something that is a good idea and ethical, and achieves, like you said, none of them.
We are hoping for sure.
2 strikes. There's going to be a third one coming up, and they're out of there. Let's move on to Canada, because there's some reports from the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. This is the CCCS. It almost reminds me of a Russian thing in a way. I don't know for whatever reason. CCCS. And they've revealed that Chinese state-sponsored hackers have compromised at least 20 different Canadian government networks over the past few years. And these breaches have granted hackers persistent access to sensitive information from government data, and it's allowing them also to collect valuable political and strategic information on top of that. And so the CCS, they released a report entitled National Cyber Threat Assessment 2025-2026. And it detailed everything in this Chinese cyber threat, highlighting how sophisticated and persistent these attacks were. And they also, not just federal, but provincial, and a wide range of these these networks within Canada. And one particular concerning incident involved targeted phishing attacks against Canadian politicians. And we had one, Michael Chong, I think was his name. He's an MP from Halton Hills. And this was a big thing that it was exposed that Chinese officials were doing some sort of harm towards him and his family. And it just raised all kinds of concerns that politicians in Canada are being attacked and threatened by Chinese individuals or Chinese state-sponsored actors. And so in 2021, members of the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China, they received emails containing malicious software designed to compromise their devices and gain access to their communications and sensitive information. It's almost like you'd be given, here's a telephone, you could use this. Oh, and as soon as you start using it, so they also emphasized, the CCCS, they also emphasized that China's technology is something that we have to take careful consideration moving forward. So stuff like 6G technology, advanced robotics, all that kind of crap, because this is stuff that a lot of it comes from China, and who knows what's really behind this, what's in there. And the attackers, as I mentioned, they went after the provincial, federal governments, but not only them, even also private sectors were impacted by all this stuff, and they were stealing this information. So all this to be said is they have information on us, a lot of information on us. Whoever dropped the ball here, heads should roll. But you know what? I'm not surprised in a way, because I'm sure that they were also getting information on other governments, not just Canadian, but probably also the UK, and maybe it infiltrated even the United States. It's just, it's a way of life now. It's 2024, and people need to be better with their security, including the government of Canada.
Pretty wild that the hacks have gone on for this long and are this widespread. I think we first started talking about government databases, government entities, different government wings and whatnot being hacked and compromised. I would guess about 6 months ago, 7 months ago, maybe a little longer. And it's not just the federal government, by the way. Like I know here in Hamilton, my wife and I wanted extra garbage tags, and Len dropped off. Wanted extra garbage tags, and when we called the city to try and get extra garbage tags, they told us that we had to make the request via phone because there was no opportunity to get online to make the request. The thing had been compromised. So, that's kind of weird. I thought that they hadn't fixed that yet, and also just had not told anybody about it. So when I look at stories like this, first thing I think is like, man, how many problems have you guys had that suddenly you're just not able to, figure out where these issues came from. I'm glad to see they made an arrest, but long story short, I would say that ultimately you're responsible for your own data, and giving it to governments, giving it to municipalities, giving it to any of these things is broadly speaking an unwise idea. So Len is off the call here. I'll go to the next story. We're going to talk a bit about sort of a late breaking story here while Len gets back online about the Canadian government banning TikTok, the company, not the app. This is from friend of the show, Michael Geist. Canadian government announced the conclusion of its national security review of TikTok and arrived at a curious conclusion. It plans to ban the company from operating in Canada, but the app will remain available here. Lots of reasons why here. The article will be linked. They're trying to provide sort of comprehensive safeguards and whatnot. And we've talked about TikTok a lot on this show over the past little while. And most of the time we come down on this idea that TikTok as an app is not an app you want on your phone, generally speaking. It's not an app you want your kids to be using or your friends or your family to be using. It's spying on you in a way that may be a little more compromising than something like Instagram or YouTube, though in the same vein, in fairness to them. The thing that, I want to note about this story is this comes at a time when the sitting government is really under a lot of pressure. And they're under a lot of pressure for a few reasons, but one of the big reasons is because of Chinese influence in elections and, witting or unwitting, support is the wrong word, but let's say cooperation from certain members of parliament and members of provincial parliament as well, I believe, who are working with the Chinese government, again, wittingly or unwittingly. So when you look at those stories and you think about how the government's been sort of, I don't want to say unwilling, but less than forthcoming, we'll say, in terms of disclosing information about who's doing what, who's been compromised. Everyone's heard about this list. Everyone's heard about these other things to do with the certain MPs. And so now you see all this stuff going on, and TikTok somehow comes to the forefront of this. And this is when they choose to say, yeah, we're taking action against the Chinese state. Really, TikTok is a proxy for the Chinese state in this story. They're taking action against TikTok. You can still keep it on your phone and digest all the sort of, brain rot slop you want, but we are telling you it's a bad idea and we're going to stop the company from existing in Canada. We're going to have it dissolve its Canadian wing. So Len, I just gave a decent, summary of the story there. Do you want to comment on this? I was saying when you were having a connection issue there, that it seems to me this is low hanging fruit and a proxy for what is the real issue between China and the government at the moment. And it's not 30-second videos on an app.
There's two different things we're going to look at. Are we still talking about the CCCS report? Because
we're talking about TikTok now. The Michael Geist article about TikTok and the dissolution of the Canadian wing of TikTok at the behest of the government.
They're closing those two offices, one in Vancouver, one in Toronto, and as you mentioned, people could still use it. Everybody knows that this is a Trojan horse, and it's here. There's nothing really we could do at this particular moment. I mean, aside from banning it altogether, but what's that going to achieve? And I see where you're coming from, but I want to take it into a different direction. Now that we're going and this is being attacked, what's the next step? I think it's going to be an outright ban probably of TikTok. And then if so, then what happens next? You mentioned at the beginning of the show, will X be attacked?
Yeah.
And I could see that, right?
Is there any validity?
Facebook?
Is there validity to this idea that the government's in hot water over a different adversarial interaction with the Chinese government at the moment, and this is lower hanging fruit than attacking that government directly, naming the MPs who are implicated in this foreign interference scandal? Is this a proxy target for that to satisfy the sort of bloodlust of the Canadian public at the moment, or no?
It might. It really, what does this achieve? Like, do you think that this is going to
does nothing? I think it achieves absolutely nothing.
Yeah. And does this increase people's? There are people are saying, yeah, this is a good move, and I think people for the most part don't really care.
Yeah,
it's just too bad.
Totally, I totally agree.
What TikTok is, it's a virus, and it's. I just looking at it. I mean, I don't want to even talk about that much. The fact that there's a different version in China, and the one that they offer their citizens versus the one that we get over here, that should be enough that something should have been done a long time ago. But now that it's there, I fear that if they do any action against it, they could do actions against some other things. Like you heard Elon Musk on Joe Rogan.
Yeah,
he did. He was even talking about X may be potential for maybe potentially attacked by the government of the United States, and he fears that's
for sure.
Possibility.
He's a target for sure. Yeah,
and just I don't know. I just want to even go into a different direction too. The foreign interference, and they're just not releasing the names. They can't release the names. That's the reality, because they're sensitive in nature. So it's never going to be released in public the way we. But Washington Post would get some of those names. It seems like
you got it.
Yeah. I guess sensitive for some, but not for others. Well, somebody dropped the ball there. Anyways, we'll move on. Let's talk about Interlock, and it's a relatively new ransomware that emerged in late 2024, and it's known for its aggressive tactics, and it focuses on critical infrastructure sectors, particularly healthcare, which, let's be honest, that's a treasure trove of information. And it's attacking FreeBSD servers across the nation. And FreeBSD, for people who are unaware, it's an open source Unix-like operating system. It comes from Berkeley Software Distribution. This is a really stable and secure platform. It prides itself on performance. Generally, it's not attacked because it's just the security that's around it, and it's not very well used or very much used. So either way, Interlock deploys what they say double extortion tactic, and this sucks because it not only encrypts victims' data, but also steals the sensitive information to hold it ransom. And if the ransom is not paid, they threaten to leak the data that they stole, and everybody gets access to it. So to protect against this, they say that regular patching should be something you do. Use strong passwords that are unique, very long, all that stuff. Regular backups is something that you should do. Network user awareness. The end user should be aware of how to do things and how not to do things. And yeah, that's basically it I got to say about this. FreeBSD, I don't think we've ever talked about it on this show or on our show, which is fun because I it's a very interesting operating system. And a lot of people love it, but I've never tried it.
Pretty interesting. I think my understanding here, I'm getting some help from ChatGPT. The Interlock breaches corporate networks, steals data, and spreads laterally to other devices before encrypting files. The stolen data is used for double extortion, like you mentioned, threatening to leak if the data ransom is not paid. Interesting. So it works well in corporate settings, right?
Especially the healthcare industry.
So that's, talk about a big honeypot. There's something to be said at this point for the responsibilities of large government and government adjacent agencies. Obviously, healthcare in the United States, not quite government, but close. Here in Canada, government, European countries, government, and probably some other jurisdictions, government. What is the responsibility they bear for this?
They got to do better.
Well, it's becoming a legitimate question, right? These guys want no responsibility. They want unlimited access to the public purse, especially here in Canada. Unlimited access to the public purse and no consequences for big breaches like this. Yeah, it's uncommon. Yeah, we haven't talked about it. Yeah, it's generally speaking, not an attack vector, but over a long enough time horizon, everybody dies. And this is exactly what that quote is about. If you wait long enough, the stuff that is not that easy to attack becomes the lowest thing on the totem pole as security and awareness and diligence improves in other domains. So I ask again, what is the responsibility that the corporations and systems teams that use this software and were, pwned by Interlock? What should they, what is the brunt? What is the burden they should bear here? What are the repercussions they should face? It's too easy to say we didn't know, right? This is the cybersecurity equivalent of market conditions, isn't it? It's basically the same thing. Like, there's nothing we could do. Market conditions.
No, you can't do something. You give people the free credit monitoring service for 1 year. So there's
a couple years.
There is a reply to this. It's industry standard. Maybe they got to up it a year and a half or 2 years.
Maybe that's it. I don't know. I continue to be frustrated by the response from these guys, though. These are big money entities, man, and they just don't seem to care at all.
It's a big responsibility they have. They're not in the business for holding data. They're in the business to provide a particular service.
Yeah.
So anyways, we'll talk about what's some dude named Alexander Connor, quote unquote, Mocha. I'm going to call him Connor from here on in. This guy's also known as Waifu and Judice. I probably butchered those two things. I'm going to still go with Connor. I like Connor. This guy was nabbed in Canada just last week because of his apparent involvement with being behind major data breaches targeting Snowflake, and that's a cloud service provider. And the arrest was done at the request of U.S. authorities. And as of yet, which is interesting, no charges have been laid. So it looks like, from what I could tell, extradition is in the cards for this dude. And earlier this year, a hacker accessed numerous Snowflake accounts. This is great stuff, Joey. And they were only secured with a password rather than multi-factor authentication. So up to 165 organizations, including big ones like AT&T and Ticketmaster, were behind the breach. So he made some critical mistakes along the way, including posting his computer system information in a ransomware video. It's like a ransom video. So it's like he's posting his driver's license and passport included in this. He's got to be better. People got to be better at doing this. This guy clearly had no clue what he was doing. He was good at one thing. This is an idiot savant. This is the right. This is the definition of idiot savant. He was good at hacking stuff, but he was terrible at hiding his identity. Like just posting his computer information. That's like a fingerprint waiting to be done. And Google did some analysis, was able to find him, and now the U.S. government. Yeah, they requested Canada arrest him, and he's in custody. So good luck to him.
Pretty funny. He would have been better off just stealing cars. Hard to get arrested doing that over here.
A couple of people from a dealership were arrested today. I'm not sure if you saw that story.
I didn't.
Yeah, so apparently there was involvement from a dealership that was behind the theft of some cars.
Where was the dealership?
Canada. They didn't name the dealership, so not only a dealership was not named, nor the manufacturer. It sucks. It would have been nice to get, but then again, my car turns 23 in less than a month.
No one's coming for your car. Yeah,
it's almost undrivable if you don't.
Buddy, your car is not. Your car is like people talk about. Oh, my car is going to be voting soon. My car is going to be drinking soon. Buddy, your car wouldn't even get drafted because age would be a concern.
Yeah, it's ready to retire in a few different ways. But no, as long as it starts, I'm continually driving that.
Yeah, I like the story. Shout out to us, right? We're cooperating with foreign authorities to put these guys away. At least maybe.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? Remember that lady that was arrested in Vancouver? What company was she behind? It was a Chinese woman. Meng, was that her last name? Wang? So like I can't remember. Chinese woman. She was behind one of the telco company or God, I forget. Huawei. Was it Huawei's CFO or something?
This was part of the Michaels saga, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, but the US were the one that was saying that we have to hold her,
Mhm.
and we did. And no charges were laid, if I recall correctly, and that one as well. So we were just doing at the request of the United States government. And I get that, and I would do the exact same thing, but it sucks to be the person that is impacted because, like, in this case, no charges have been laid as of yet, though. Let's just wait a little
Yeah.
while.
Yeah, no, it's good. We'll see what happens. We'll tag along with this one going forward. If we need to give an update, we will. That's it. Access of Easy wrapped up again for this week. Next week and for the next few weeks, you will have a new co-host. While
Yeah, for 2 weeks. The
yeah,
third week, I'm still trying to find one. So
TBD could be my uncle. We'll see if he's willing to.
no, we have been offered, if you recall correctly. I don't want to name names.
Oh yes,
And that would be interesting if that person says, "Yeah, I'll do it."
yes, that would
So
be
that
interesting.
so 3 weeks looks like you're gonna be off, and the
Yes.
fourth one we'll see what happens then.
We'll
Next
see.
time we see you, you're gonna be
I'll be lacking sleep, more gray hair, and
it's a checkbox, right?
one under my belt. One under my belt. That's it.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys when we see you, and take care of yourselves.